Bangkok throbbed with life. The city was a pulsating heart, beating with the rhythm of countless lives intertwined in a complex dance of survival and ambition. Neon lights flickered, casting a kaleidoscope of colors on the streets below, where vendors hawked their wares and the aroma of street food mingled with the scent of exhaust fumes. But for Manochan, fresh from his rural village, it was overwhelming. The sheer volume of people, the cacophony of sounds, and the relentless pace of city life were a stark contrast to the serene, slow-moving days he was used to. He felt like a small fish thrown into a vast, turbulent ocean. He had landed a job at a bustling textile factory. The factory floor was a hive of activity, with machines whirring and workers moving with practiced efficiency. It was a world away from the open fields and clear skies of his village, but it was a job, and it was his ticket to a new life. It was a chance to start anew. Manochan carried with him not just a suitcase but a heart full of dreams and a mind brimming with hopes. He was determined to make the most of this opportunity, to carve out a place for himself in this sprawling metropolis. His uncle Somchai offered him a simple room. Somchai had moved to Bangkok years ago and had built a modest life for himself. He understood the challenges Manochan would face and was eager to help his nephew find his footing. It was behind his house in the quiet outskirts of the city. Manochan was grateful. The room was small, but it was a sanctuary from the chaos of the city. It was a place where he could rest, gather his thoughts, and plan his next steps. It was a chance to find his footing. As he unpacked his few belongings, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. This was his space, his little corner of the world where he could begin to build his new life. The air was thick with the aroma of street food. Vendors lined the streets, their stalls brimming with colorful, tantalizing dishes. The sizzle of frying pans and the chatter of customers created a symphony of sounds that was both foreign and fascinating to Manochan. The city never seemed asleep. Even as the sun dipped below the horizon, the streets remained alive with activity. Neon signs flickered to life, and the nightlife began to stir. Bars, clubs, and night markets buzzed with energy, offering a stark contrast to the quiet nights Manochan was used to. Manochan navigated the crowded streets. Each step was a new experience. Each corner turned a new discovery. He marveled at the diversity of people, the blend of old and new, the way tradition and modernity coexisted in this vibrant city. He found his way to his uncle's home. The journey back was a welcome respite from the sensory overload of the city. The quiet neighborhood was a stark contrast to the bustling streets he had just left behind. Relief washed over him as he stepped into the quiet lane. The familiar sight of his uncle's house brought a sense of comfort and belonging. It was a reminder that amidst the chaos, there was a place he could call home. Somchai's house was a small, single-story structure. It was modest but well-kept, a testament to his uncle's hard work and perseverance. The house stood as a symbol of the life Manochan hoped to build for himself. It was painted a cheerful blue. The bright color stood out against the muted tones of the surrounding buildings, a beacon of hope and positivity in the otherwise drab neighborhood. It stood out against the lush greenery surrounding it. Somchai had a green thumb, and his garden was a small oasis of tranquility. The plants and flowers added a touch of nature to the urban landscape, a reminder of the rural life Manochan had left behind. Manochan was exhausted from the journey. The long bus ride, the overwhelming city, and the emotional roller coaster of the day had taken their toll. He was ready to rest, to recharge, and to face the challenges of his new life with renewed energy. He greeted his uncle and aunt warmly. Their familiar faces and kind smiles were a balm to his weary soul. They welcomed him with open arms, their warmth and hospitality a stark contrast to the impersonal city. He was touched by their hospitality. They shared a simple meal, filled with laughter and stories. It was a reminder of the importance of family, of the bonds that tied them together despite the distance and the years apart. They showed him to his room. It was small and sparsely furnished, but it was clean and comfortable. It was a place where he could rest his head and dream of the future. It was small and sparsely furnished. A bed, a table, and a chair were all it contained, but it was enough. It was a blank canvas, waiting for Manochan to fill it with his own story. But it was a welcome sanctuary from the chaos of the city. Here he could find peace and quiet, a place to reflect and plan. It was a refuge, a place where he could gather his strength for the challenges ahead. Manochan knew he could find peace here. The room, though simple, was a haven. It was a place where he could be himself, away from the prying eyes and the relentless pace of the city. At least, that's what he thought. As he stared out of the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The journey had just begun, and the road ahead was uncertain, but for now, he was content to take it one step at a time. Life settled into a routine. The bustling streets of Bangkok would slowly come to life as the first light of dawn broke through the horizon. The air was filled with the aroma of street food, the chatter of vendors setting up their stalls, and the distant hum of motorbikes. Amidst this vibrant chaos, there was a sense of order and predictability. Manochan would wake up before dawn. His small room, though modest, was a sanctuary of sorts. The walls were adorned with pictures of his family and a few mementos from his village. Each morning he would stretch and take a moment to gather his thoughts, preparing himself for the day ahead. He would join his uncle for a cup of strong Thai tea. The ritual was more than just a morning beverage, it was a moment of connection. They would sit on the porch, the steam from their cups mingling with the cool morning air, and watch the sunrise paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Then he would head to the factory. The work was tiring. The factory was a stark contrast to the serenity of the morning. The clanging of machines, the sweat on his brow, and the repetitive tasks were all part of his daily grind. Yet, amidst the monotony, there was a sense of purpose. But Manochan was determined to make a life for himself. Each task, no matter how mundane, was a step towards his dreams. He envisioned a future where his hard work would pay off, where he could provide a better life for his family. He sent most of his earnings back home. Every month he would visit the remittance service, carefully counting the money before sending it. It was a tangible connection to his family, a way to support them even from afar. He knew it would help his family. The thought of his parents' smiles and the relief in their eyes kept him going. It was a sacrifice, but one he was willing to make. In the evenings, Manochan would sit with his uncle on their small porch. The day's work would be behind them, and they would find solace in each other's company. The porch, with its creaky wooden floorboards and the gentle rustling of leaves, was a haven of peace. They would sip tea and watch the sun dip below the horizon. The sky would transform into a canvas of purples and blues, and the world seemed to slow down. It was a moment to reflect, to dream, and to simply be. Somchai would tell him stories of old Bangkok, tales of a city that was both familiar and foreign, filled with adventures and mysteries. Each story was a window into a different time, a different world. He spoke of its charm and its secrets, the narrow alleyways, the hidden temples, and the vibrant festivals. It was a city that had seen so much, and yet, there was always something new to discover. Manochan soaked it all in, every word, every detail. He felt a deep connection to the stories as if they were a part of his own history. He was slowly falling in love with this city, the bustling markets, the serene temples, and the ever-changing skyline. Bangkok was becoming more than just a place to live, it was becoming a part of him. His aunt, a kind woman with a quick smile, would often join them. Her presence brought warmth and laughter to their evenings. She had a way of making everyone feel at home. She would bring out plates of sweet mango sticky rice. The dessert was a family favorite, a perfect blend of flavors that reminded them of home. As they ate, fireflies would begin to twinkle in the garden. It was idyllic. The soft glow of the fireflies, the gentle hum of the night, and the shared moments of joy created a sense of magic. For a while, Manochan forgot his anxieties. The worries of the day, the uncertainties of the future, all seemed to fade away in those moments of tranquility. He felt a sense of belonging. Surrounded by family, embraced by the city's charm, he felt at peace. It was a feeling he had longed for, a sense of being exactly where he was meant to be. It was a feeling he had longed for. The calm before the storm, a moment of serenity before the challenges of life would inevitably return. But for now, in this quiet corner of Bangkok, Manochan found his sanctuary. One day, his aunt suggested Manochan move to a larger room. She had noticed that his current space was cramped and thought he deserved a bit more comfort. She spoke with a gentle tone, her eyes filled with concern and care. Manochan, though grateful, felt a twinge of apprehension. The room she was referring to was at the back of the house, a place he had always avoided. It was at the back of the house. It had been empty for years. The room was a relic of the past, filled with old furniture covered in dust and memories long forgotten. The walls, once vibrant, were now faded and peeling. It was a stark contrast to the rest of the house, which was warm and welcoming. Manochan hesitated. The room was separated from the main house. It felt isolated, almost like a different world. He stood at the entrance, his heart pounding. The silence was deafening, and the air felt thick with the weight of time. He could almost hear the whispers of the past echoing through the empty space. It had its own entrance. A sense of unease crept over him. The door, heavy and creaky, seemed to groan under the weight of its own history. He felt a chill run down his spine as he imagined what stories the room could tell if it could speak. The thought of moving into such a place filled him with dread, but he couldn't bring himself to refuse his aunt's kindness. The room was dusty and dark. The windows were covered in grime, allowing only slivers of light to penetrate the gloom. The air was stale, carrying the scent of neglect. It was clear that no one had set foot in it for years, and the room seemed to have settled into its own quiet desolation. Cobwebs hung from every corner. It was clear that no one had set foot in it for years. The room was a time capsule, untouched by the present. Each piece of furniture, each speck of dust, seemed to tell a story of a time long gone. Manochan felt like an intruder in a place that had been forgotten by the world. The air felt heavy, stagnant. The only window was boarded shut. It was as if the room itself was trying to keep the outside world at bay. The boards were old and brittle, but they held firm, casting the room in perpetual twilight. Manochan wondered why the window had been boarded up in the first place. What had happened in this room that made someone want to seal it off from the world? Manochan felt a shiver run down his spine. He pushed the feeling aside. He told himself it was just his imagination, that there was nothing to fear. But the room seemed to have a life of its own, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He tried to focus on the task at hand, determined to make the room livable. He told himself it was just his imagination. He spent the next few days cleaning and airing out the room. He scrubbed the floors, dusted the furniture, and opened the windows to let in some fresh air. Slowly the room began to lose its oppressive atmosphere. The sunlight streamed in, chasing away the shadows and filling the space with warmth. As he worked, he couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. His uncle helped him move his meager belongings. Together, they carried his bed, his books, and his clothes into the room. His uncle tried to reassure him, telling him that the room just needed some life in it. But even his uncle seemed ill at ease, casting nervous glances around the room as they worked. He tried to reassure him. He said the room just needed some life in it. His uncle's words were meant to be comforting, but they only served to heighten Manochan's unease. The room felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Manochan couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone, that the room was watching him, waiting for him to let his guard down, but even he seemed ill at ease. That night, as Manochan lay down on his mat, he couldn't help but feel that he wasn't alone. The room seemed to come alive in the darkness, the shadows shifting and whispering secrets. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to tell himself that it was just his imagination, that there was nothing to fear, but deep down, he knew that the room held secrets, and that he was not alone. The first few nights were the hardest. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside his window sent shivers down Manochan's spine. He would lie awake for hours, listening intently to the sounds of the night. He told himself it was just the house settling. But deep down, he felt a growing sense of unease. One night he woke to a strange sound. It was a soft whisper, just at the edge of his hearing. He sat up, his heart pounding in his chest. He strained to listen. The sound came again, closer this time. It seemed to be coming from just outside his door. He froze, fear gripping him like a vice. He wanted to call out to his uncle and aunt, but something held him back. He slowly got out of bed and crept towards the door. His hand trembled as he reached for the